All right, welcome to my theories and theorists presentation. This first part of this video is going to be about Lee and Marlene Cantor and their assertive discipline classroom discipline, classroom management approach. And a second video will follow with Jerome Bruner and his spiral curriculum. Lee and Marlene Cantor. Marlene was a special education teacher. Lee was a guidance counselor. And in 1976, they, in the years prior to that, just combining their knowledge and backgrounds, they were trying to deal with this difficult challenge that teachers have of controlling, managing their classrooms. So they left their original careers and formed Cantor and Associates and wrote their first book, Assertive Discipline, a take-charge approach for today's educators, which went through 3 other revisions and multiple printings. And they began crossing the country, consulting with and training teachers in their assertive method. And they also authored 40 books. Now, the Cantors were strongly influenced by the concepts of assertion training, originally developed by Joseph Wolpe in the 1950s, who was one of the most notable psychiatrists of the 20th century. He was using assertion training to help veterans suffering from PTSD cope in their social settings. And that research was built upon by Eisler, Herson, and Miller in 1973. So these gentlemen were contemporaries of the Cantors. And in their conclusion of their clinical research published by in the Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology, they gave a challenge for others to begin to validate their findings, that assertion training could really make a difference. And they said clinicians should identify classes of interpersonal situations in which deficits can be identified. Training will then consist of increasing assertive responses to specific types of interaction. Well, the Cantors took up this challenge and began to experiment with assertion therapy and the interaction between teachers and their students. And they began to include this kind of training in their consulting. And the outcome was their assertive discipline model. This quote here, which is seen throughout their presentations and their writings, is, I care too much about you reaching your full potential in my classroom to allow any student to stop you from learning or me from teaching for any reason. Just some core beliefs and key ideas of their approach. One is that teachers have rights to be able to get their personal needs met. It wasn't just about the child's needs and the child's rights. They have a right to respect for a quiet room, and they have the right to structure their class and routine to maximize learning. And they have the right to expect appropriate behavior from all of their students. Teachers were often feeling powerless. The respect, remember that Cantors were coming out with this in the 1970s. There was in the society a loss of respect for the role of the teacher and authority in general. There were changes in parenting styles that teachers could no longer assume that they would have the support of parents in discipline matters. And there was also the use and misuse of behavioral educational theories that view discipline as harmful and emphasize the needs of the students to express their feelings. Well, teachers have rights too, the Cantors said. And they also have the right to ask for help from administrators and parents. Some of their core beliefs was that all students can behave appropriately no matter how big the problem, whether it was a bad home life, cultural aspects, disabilities, mental, emotional disabilities. Every student can behave appropriately, and that teachers can have a positive influence on child behavior, and it's okay to expect and demand that all students behave appropriately. The Cantors had a behavioral management cycle, and this actually came out later in their work, in their later books, and thus followed was clearly communicate explicit directions with concise and detailed language, use of behavioral narration. I'll give an example of that shortly. And take corrective action by restating directions and having a hierarchy of consequences. I'll give an example of that shortly. And persistent use of corrective actions every time. Another key idea was teaching students to manage their own behavior in a highly structured way, so that students begin to manage their own, can move towards self-management. And they actually came out with a curriculum that helped teachers accomplish this goal. And the final, but almost the most important key concept here, was that building relationships was the key to classroom management. We can't assume that all students will trust you based upon their personal or home experiences. And so there's a trust deficit, so that building relationships between students and their parents was so vital to them for managing the classroom. Some recommended practices and applications for the classroom. Number 1 is determine your specific needs. This involves setting reasonable expectations for children at their stage of development. And then think through every situation of the day, the times of transition, the time at recess, in the cafeteria, all the situations of the day. What are your specific needs? What are your expectations? And how are you going to clearly communicate that to your students so that they can achieve your expectations? And then also teach responsible behavior. This is where one of their key ideas came in, and I'll show you kind of a cover of that book that they wrote. And the next one is assertive limit setting for unwanted behavior. The first part of this was demands and developing a teacher voice. This is an assertive communication method through voice and action that shows the teacher is in charge. This they also bring out in their 2010 edition of their book. Also giving explicit directions. Talked about this earlier. And then follow through. Their first commandment was, don't make demands that you're not prepared to follow through on. They have to be things that you feel comfortable using, organized in a hierarchy. I'll give you an example of that. Here's just a little short blurb from our school student handbook. And you could see, if you decide to make the choice to write on the desk or slam doors or any way disrespect the school building and grounds, you might get 2 detentions. And if that doesn't solve the problem and you're persisting in doing that, then it's going to become 3 days of in-school suspension, then 5 days. But you can see how they're increasing in severity. That's the kind of hierarchy that we're talking about. So this follow through, something that the child doesn't like but is not harmful, and it's presented as a choice. And when this child is making the choice, whether to make a good choice or a bad choice. And then once the child does make a choice, that is implemented, the follow through is implemented, and it's delivered in a calm and matter-of-fact manner, and it's consistently and persistently used. And the Cantors also believe that that positive behavior needed to be responded to in an assertive way. They felt like teachers need to strike a balance of time and energy spent responding not only to undesirable behavior but the desirable behavior, and make use of some of the same kinds of verbal and nonverbal techniques from undesirable behavior, like eye contact, gestures, using the student's name, touch, and also, I failed to mention this earlier, but a broken record where you repeat things over and over again till you get the desired results. And also this idea of a behavioral narration. is another technique where you're providing positive feedback for the kids who are following the directions. Let me give you an example of that. Play that. Just a short little video giving an example.
Right now, when I say go, we're going to work in our partners. So that means you're going to turn your body to your partner. You're going to use 12-inch voices. And today we're only going to work on the first 3 problems of the assignment in class. So ready? Go. All right? Maya and Ben are getting started on those first 3 problems. Otis and Aaliyah are using 12-inch voices. Jamal and Malik are leaning in towards their partners.
All right. And also follow through. Positive assertive response involves follow through as well. Positive calls to parents, rewards, special privileges. This little graphic here shows some different rewards that are used in classrooms all the time to respond to positive behavior and affirm that and build that up. Also, the use of a class-wide system that's ongoing and is for everybody. An example of that, last year at the school where I work at, there was a school-wide positive follow-through method using cotton balls. Every grade, every classroom received a bucket, and all the staff were encouraged to just be on the lookout for good behavior. And they would reward the kids with, put a cotton ball in your bucket. And whether that was on an individual basis or as a whole class, they would want to fill up their bucket. And then when the class filled it up, they would take it to the office, and it was kind of a race to see which class could fill their bucket up first. And the class that filled it up first would get a reward, maybe some extra recess time or free time on the iPads, or a pajama day, whatever. And then the buckets would be emptied and they'd go at it again. And so it was really responded to very well, and while it lasted. So that's an example of a classroom-wide system. The Cantors had some limitations and some critics to their method. The authors of Discipline with Dignity, Richard Kerwin and Alan Mendler, wrote an article that they felt like the Cantors' assertive discipline was too behavioral, too reliant upon stimuli and response, and was overly focused on rule following without question, and a dangerous emphasis on conformity. And that the whole method of the teacher, upfront giving all the directions was created a long-term lack of taking personal responsibility. Another evaluation of their method came from Gary Render, Janelle Padilla, Mark Crank, as they kind of evaluated the evidence of its effectiveness. And they said, there was only 10 this is something they wrote in 1989, I believe. And yes, 1989, that at that point there was only 10 dissertations written on assertive discipline, only 3 journal articles, and 3 other reports. So they were saying, this is not research based. This is based on general and practical strategies and techniques. And that they did see from the evidence that maybe there was some benefit from improvement in some extreme behavior cases. Here's some of their key writings, their basic book here. Here's the curriculum guide for their behavioral, the classroom teaching responsible behavior. And this is a great step-by-step tool that's very practical, very simplified. And then they also had some resources for parents as well. I want to thank you for this is listening to this first part of my Theories and Theorists. I hope you check out some of these resources.